Hello, everyone. As y'all may know, I'm Deontay Chantel, and today I'm here with the beautiful Fabiola from the Invest with Fab Podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And I've been following your journey. You're doing a lot of big things. You are a female real estate developer and a serial entrepreneur. Can you tell us about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Fabiola Fleuranvil. So I run a marketing agency, Blueprint Creative Group, that I've had since 2007. So we are in the government and corporate sector. So we provide brand strategy, marketing strategy at a corporate level, state and local, and then universities, tourism brands, et cetera. And we are now moving into the federal space with our 8A certification coming down the pipeline and hopefully being approved in the next few days or so. And then I'm also a real estate developer. So I run both businesses in parallel. They started at the same time, actually, 2006, 2007. As a female developer, especially in the commercial real estate space, I'm working on a 138 unit affordable assisted living facility. That's a totally different landscape when it comes to real estate. And you see a lot of structures that are already in place where gender and racial bias is definitely at the forefront. So you get it from both ends.
That's amazing. I caught an article or a post on Instagram about doing business with the feds,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very informational. I've been looking into also how to get, what is it called? Is it government certified?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been also trying to get government certified, and I actually meant to, reach out to you sooner, even before starting this podcast with like additional questions, but I did catch the video on YouTube. It was very informative. Didn't know the federal government will actually contract individuals or businesses for their services. So I thought that was amazing. I knew it was on the state level, but I just didn't know it was on the federal level. So thanks for putting that information out there, because most of individuals, they're on Instagram, they're trying to convince people to buy their products when they can ultimately have the government purchase their products and services. So I think our community needs to know that information, and hopefully they'll put themselves in a position to qualify as a business that can work with the federal government.
Yeah. So the federal government is the biggest customer that you can have, hands down. Not only is the money long, it's good money, but the contracts essentially can be longer terms. They're not buying like for 30 days, unless it's a, product or something like that. But essentially you'll have a 1, 3, 5 year contract with the federal government and you can easily scale up your business. So that doing business with the feds webinar that I led with the SBA, that's under my agency umbrella, Blueprint Creative Group. So I have a platform, blackpagesmiami.com, which I created about 3 years ago. It's a digital directory of Black-owned businesses in South Florida, and it is powered by the county, a county department here in Miami-Dade County. And so part of our work is to provide technical training to businesses in the community. And so that's one of the topics that we tend to focus on. A lot of businesses tend to leave out the federal government. It's easy to think of city and state, which is cool. That's a good, starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But the federal government is the difference between having a $50,000 contract and having a $2 million contract. One contract can do that with the federal government. And there are set asides for women-owned businesses, small disadvantaged businesses. There are certifications if you're in a hub zone. That's essentially an area of a community that may either be an urban area, a reinvestment area, and you get set asides for being in certain areas like a hub zone.
Right.
And a lot of businesses are not using it. And the thing about the federal government is it's hard to get your foot in the door when you don't know what to do. There's a strategy with the federal government. And that's where collaboration and teaming is the formula in the federal government. And the government essentially contracts out every single thing. The government doesn't produce anything and they don't own anything. So everything from the pens that the government uses to the paper to, I've seen contracts, granted, it may not be as frequent as other commonly used services, but I've seen contracts for hair services because guess what? The prisons, they need barbers, they need salon services. Even from a real estate perspective, the government needs to lease office space and they have contracts for brokers.
Right.
They have cleaning contracts, janitorial contracts, everything that you can think of, the government has a contract for.
That's amazing. Yeah, I recently discovered that they needed barbers in the prison. Actually, earlier this week, I was on another informational session, and I was like, that's pretty interesting. And like you said, these are 6-figure, 7-figure contracts. And some of those projects, you don't have to show up every day. It's probably like 2 to 3 days out the week for 2 months or something like that. So I think I'm glad your company is showcasing these services, because it's truly a disservice that many Black entrepreneurs and business owners don't know it's available to them. So
it's available. We just have to. It's on us to get the information. The information is freely open. It's
yeah,
public. There's nothing that's hidden. When you
right,
want to be in business, you have to seek out the information. We live in the age of Google University and YouTube, right? So nothing is hidden. Everything's available. The SBA has offices in every community, right? Every
right,
university. A lot of the universities have SBA branches. They call them the SBDC. So the information is out there. Black people have access to it. It's whether or not we're taking
yeah,
advantage. It's a difference between being in business and being okay with just making money for you and your family to eat, or wanting to be in a business where you can employ other people and get to a point where you can either get your business acquired or you can acquire somebody else's business. And
right.
that's the generational impact that businesses have to start thinking about.
And I totally agree. I actually had where I do business banking at, I'm not going to say the name of the bank, but one of the business account managers, she actually hosted a SBA for women minority businesses, we'll say women and minority businesses, but that was just on a state level. So I was shocked to know that it's another scale of things. Federal level is an option, and they have their qualifications that you have to meet, and this is where setting up your business correctly comes into play. I feel like people just think having a sole proprietorship is starting up a business correctly, and of course it's not, especially if when the government has their qualifications. You need to have an LLC. In some cases, you need to probably structure a correct S corp. You need to have a DUNS number. So there's different things that go into setting up a business, and some people are just misinformed. But now that we are in the technology space, like you said, going on Google, going on YouTube University has a lot of great insight and instructions on how to get things done.
I mean, even besides that, your back end has to be tight. You need a CPA, not a run-of-the-mill person who does your taxes. Because the government, they audit, they have recording and reporting requirements. Your paperwork has to be at a certain level. They need to see financial strength and quality according to accounting principles. So, and that's the reason why a lot of small businesses got left out of the PPP programs. You got to have all of those things right. Even as a business owner, you might be the only employee. You should be paying yourself wages, W-2. Put yourself on a salary, because those are all things that make a difference. And you learn that stuff. I mean, I've learned as I've, grown through business, but it's better when you can learn and shorten up that learning curve a lot faster and get there a lot faster.
Awesome. And do you teach individuals how to set up their businesses correctly as well?
No, that's not the business that I'm in. I'm
right. I was just asking.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's a lot of small business companies that do stuff like that. We work at the government level and corporate, so our services are marketing related for that sector of the business. This webinar was part of blackpagesmiami.com.
Okay.
And it's part of the technical training that small businesses can get.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about real estate. But as we know, that sector of the conversation had to be brought up because it's critical to our communities. But like you stated, you are also a real estate developer. You are currently building or developing a 138 unit assisted living senior housing facility.
Right, in Detroit.
Awesome. So tell us about that project.
So it's a very complex project in the sense that it's affordable assisted living, meaning that I'm doing low income housing tax credits, and that's subsidized financing from the state level. And that's that part of the real estate industry where you're in a different ballpark because it's no longer, I need a 1 million or $2 million loan. You're talking about 7-figure type redevelopment project for it.
Right.
I didn't go into it with the intention of it being assisted living. I had been scoping out this building. It was a former senior housing project. So I'm thinking perhaps it'll be redeveloped as multifamily. And then just natural progression as you're doing your due diligence and interacting with potential collaborators, ideas come forth, opportunities come to the table, and the fruition of it is an assisted living facility. So, people might think, okay, you're nowhere near being in the senior space age-wise, right? Why would you want to go into that segment? Well, seniors are about to be the biggest demographic shift in this country. In less than 5 years, I don't even know what the number is, but I would say maybe at least a quarter of this country's population are going to be seniors. All these boomers that are like 50s right now are going to be assisted living age. Assisted living starts typically like 62 to 65. The sweet spot is 75 to 85. So the shift is going to happen. So over the past 5 years, a lot of like the bigger developers, they've all been going into the senior space because there's a housing shortage. What happens is that seniors are having a hard time aging in place. So you've been in your home since you were, in your younger years, and now that you're getting up there in age, you might have 2 stories, and as you get older, that's not suitable for you. You may need on ramps, for wheelchairs or for canes. Your showers have to be equipped differently as you get older. So seniors have a hard time aging in place. So that's created a housing shortage in this country. So developers essentially were like looking at every corner. Where can we put a senior housing building? Now, the difference with assisted living is that it's the in-between between you no longer wanting to be at home and nursing home. So you're not quite nursing home ready. You don't need help. You can live independently. So they all have their own units. They just get like extra services, like 3 meals a day plus, a snack. They have wellness services. They have medication management, transportation, laundry. And a lot of these seniors, it's the best fit for them. However, it's expensive. Average cost is $5,000 to $7,000 a month. So only the more affluent seniors typically can afford it. So I'm doing an affordable assisted living facility where it's subsidized, and it's a whole complex capital stack that includes public financing, tax-exempt bond financing, and other sources of CDFI financing as well.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And do you have any partners on this deal?
Well, I'm the owner of the building. I'm the
Awesome.
project owner, but I have a co-developer that I brought on.
Okay.
Real estate is a team sport. Everything from the Empire State Building to every major project out there is a collaboration. Everyone has different strengths. So sometimes you bring collaborators in from a financial capacity perspective.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's from, on paper, it's much better to have a collaborator when you got to go before a bank.
Right.
Carrying whole debt on paper is not exciting for a bank. So on paper, you need collaborators. And so you'll see complex $50 million deals. And this is the difference between us and how real estate is done. We tend to think, okay, let me go ahead and buy me a property. I'm a flip, I'm a wholesale, I own a 3-unit or a 5-unit. And there's only a limit that you can do when you're doing it on your own. There's a ceiling. So, doing real estate from that perspective, you'll stay at that certain level versus when you think collaboratively, you can do a $20 million project without having $20 million in the bank. And that's the difference. So real estate, we have to approach it as a team sport and knowing that it's not something that's ever meant to be done alone.
And I agree 1,000%. Whether it's someone needing a credit partner or a finance partner or even a building partner. Sometimes you need to build with construction teams or other developers, of course, to get it done. So I agree wholeheartedly with you.
It's an out-of-state project for me. I don't live in Detroit. I'm not from Detroit. I don't have like strong local ties like now I do, just because I had to build up my social and political capital in order to make this deal happen. But I don't intend on, traveling every other week to be in Detroit. So having a local footprint is important. My attorney is in Detroit.
Right.
And it's essentially a Black-owned project. So my attorney, to my co-developer, to my GC, my architectural and engineering firm are all Black. Yeah, so it's important, and I'm actually the only woman on my team.
Awesome.
So all guys. So I'm the youngest. They're all senior, but this is where it's important for mentors, because I'm blessed to where I can pick up a phone call and say, hey, there's a building I want to buy in Detroit. I don't know anyone in Detroit. I need a co-developer, because it's politics. Real estate is politics at that level. You need to, I'm getting state financing. I need people who got, people on their cell phone who can make phone calls.
Right.
They know people. So you got to have that type of, that root planted. So it's a blessing to be able to call up a mentor, and your mentor leads you to your attorney, and your attorney is like, well, I got a couple of names that could team up with you, and it goes down like that.
That's beautiful. What I would say is people don't realize the importance, even at your level, you have a mentor as well,
I have mentors. I probably got like
mentors.
20 mentors.
Right. Because I don't know why people have this notion that, okay, I learned how to do it. I don't need nobody to show me how to do it. But even me, like I have real estate mentors and I have spiritual mentors. So I have people for different components of who I am as an individual. But you need them. You need people that you could feed information or get feedback from. Definitely you need people that are connected, right? Even, having a business advisor. And like you said, real estate is very political. My first episode, we spoke about, doing development. We're in Newark, and I had a female developer from Newark who's doing the same thing that I'm doing in the city. And we definitely discussed how political real estate is.
Right.
Even if you're building a home, like
Right.
I had to submit 5 different renderings to City Council of East Orange, and then they decided which house they wanted me to build.
Right.
So whether you're building a hospital, a senior living facility, or a 2-unit residential, you do have to become peers or collaborators with your municipality in all capacities. What inspired you to begin your journey as a real estate investor and or developer?
I'm an entrepreneur. I've always been. So I have an MBA degree, and I never intended on going into corporate America. So graduated with my MBA, and my decision at that point, even though I had opportunities on the table, my decision was to turn my back on those opportunities and to go into business. That was always my intent, even from middle school and high school. So I started my business as soon as I graduated from grad school, and essentially bought my first property at that point, 23 years old, and bought my first property. And that was my start, because I got a couple more within a year's time frame, and that was my start.
How did you actually come across purchasing the senior housing building? Like, how did you come across that project?
Well, I was looking for a new market to tap into. So I'm in Miami. So I was investing in Miami and Jacksonville. Atlanta is like home number 2. That's where I got my start with real estate. But I was looking for like a number 2, number 3 market where competition would be a little different. Being in Miami, the competition is fierce. You're talking about long money, people who can buy a $10 million building cash without blinking an eye.
Right.
So I wanted to be able to compete differently, and then to be able to bring that back home and do what I need to do from a larger scale. And Detroit was already on my radar. Obviously, you hear the stories about Detroit and the challenges. And then but I also saw opportunity in that. So a lot of people tend to go where the herd is going. Mm-hmm. As an entrepreneur, I don't have a problem going in uncharted territory, and Detroit is uncharted territory. So I essentially made a phone call to FAMU alum. I went to FAMU for undergrad and was like, hey, I know you from Detroit. I'm coming into the city. Who do I need to know? And he led me to a developer who essentially was a Black man, young Black man, I would say, in his early 50s. And he was part of the casino deal in Detroit. And that's the thing that I loved about Detroit. These buildings have Black people on it, all these projects. The casino, Black owned. You drive around these buildings, commercial buildings, all Black owned, major developments, all Black owned. And that's essentially who pretty much was like, well, let me show you around. So I came in, and that, led to everything else.
So we know that you love collaborating. I love collaborating also. What are some of the skills that you look for in a partner?
I don't have certain skills that I look for in a partner. Every single deal that I've done has always been collaboration, even if it's a single family. I bought a property one time. I told my sister, I was like, look, you got cash lying around. You might as well invest in this. Told my mom the same thing. And, they didn't hesitate and they invested in it. So everything is really about minimizing your risk. For me, I have attorneys, I have a CPA. So I allow the legal process to work itself out. So I don't have certain skill sets. If you're willing to go into a deal with me, you obviously trust me. You obviously trust yourself. You're willing to put some skin in the game. So there's a lot that you're not going to do to kill the deal, right? So that initially already is a qualifier. And then everything else is on paper. I've never had to have an issue because I get the legal side involved very early and have the agreement set in stone.
Definitely agreed. And as a female investor and developer in this male-dominated industry, have you had any obstacles, or have you faced any obstacles as a female in this business?
I mean, obstacles are a natural part of being a woman and being Black, right? So you don't even really notice them just because you just know it's there. There's invisible barriers, and then there's barriers that are like very open and out there in the public. So that's not a challenge that I see as an obstacle. What I can say is that being in the space at this level of the game where it's all white guys, a lot of them older white guys, being a younger woman works to your advantage. Being a Black woman works to your advantage. And I've had white guys tell me that. They're used to being with other men all day long. And to see a woman who is not intimidated to be in that space, especially since I stick out like a sore thumb, not intimidated to be in that space, and I could hold my own in conversation. I can spit out numbers just as well as they can. Nothing they tell me intimidates me. And even if it's something that I don't even know, they still wouldn't even see me sweat. So, and then charm works well in real estate, especially if you're in a male-dominated industry. Charm works really well. So you have to know how to use a lot of your own personality to your advantage. Being attractive, I'll say, works very well in real estate. These men, they see men all day long. To see another woman, whether you Black or white, that's a difference for them. So not to say that overlooks a lot of the systemic barriers is there. I'm on a deal where I got to go to the state for financing. They're not used to seeing somebody like me come before them. So there are some natural barriers that they're not even aware that they're doing. It's just a natural part of the system to not make it easy or attractive for you to go in.
Right.
So I see that all the time. So for me, it's always about outsmarting them. It's always about having my backdoor strategies. And I do that quite often. So I don't really see them as barriers. I just know that they're going to be there. They exist. Now, what do I need to do to be able to overcome this?
I love that attitude. And like you said, it's not an obstacle for you. It's definitely, and in many ways, it's a benefit, and I've even been invited on projects just because they needed a female. Unfortunately, there's quotas on larger projects that have to be met. So I've been sorted out for particular projects in our neighborhood, and I'm like, okay, you need a Black woman to be on there? Let's do it. And then I also looked at them side-eye like, really, is that all you need me for? So they're, they have a lot of, for one, especially when you're working with, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, government or municipality entities, they have jobs specifically for women to, participate in.
Yeah, but those types of opportunities are far and few in between. The little chunk that they give to Black people and white and women is a tiny fraction. It's a sliver of the entire pie. So it's totally different. The backroom deals that get handed across the table don't include us. We're not in those conversations. So we might have a nice little deal. Trust me, they'll sneeze on it. It's insignificant to them, so that they can give it to you just to kind of, I guess, appease you and pat you on the back, and have you feel good. So those deals are, I mean, it's crazy because you see contracts that's specifically written for certain developers, right? And there's no way you could ever compete
Right.
against those developers. And so systemically, it's already there. And then being a woman, being younger, being a Black person, you're in certain rooms and you're the only one like yourself in that room. You get overlooked a lot. So, it's just part of the system, part of the game. So it's not something that you'll ever be able to overcome. Even if you blow the whistle, have your bullhorn, they don't care. They want to make money at the end of the day. And the biggest the biggest deal maker is who makes the money. And a lot of times we're not in those rooms. A lot of times and I've had to, strategize around this. I'll put in an offer on a deal that I know if they know it's coming from me, it's going to kill the deal. So I often have to think about, okay, do I need a front man? Do I need to go get me an attorney that's going to be the front man? And I've had my mentor who's done billion-dollar transactions, significant deals. He was on the pension side and did deals on with public pensions. And even at his level, he's also had to have frontmen. And when they knew, even though he could do the deal, but when they knew it was coming from him, the language changed. And that happens a lot, and that's at every level. It doesn't even have to be a $20 million transaction. I'll go ahead and put an offer on a 30-unit apartment building. And they want to know who it's coming from because they size you up like that. And so there are some things that you just can't overcome. And sometimes you just have to be a little slick about how you go about it.
Right. And we can band together.
That doesn't mean anything sometimes.
Like a bunch of women coming in there. No, it doesn't mean
Look, these deals are happening before they even hit the public light.
No, I was going to say that. So, for instance, my city, the city in Newark, or one of my cities, they actually put out an ordinance. And this ordinance went throughout the country. So they had different ordinances throughout the country for female developers and minority developers. A lot of the projects, so our downtown area, it's like at least 20 abandoned buildings there, okay?
Yeah.
And you don't know what's happening. We had a city list of vacant and abandoned properties, and they had certain projects that wasn't on the list, but it was abandoned. And I'm like, well, did you guys follow the ordinance for a female developer? Of course they didn't. And even when we had a lead pipe incident similar to Flint as well. And even for those contracts, they needed to have a percentage that went to females and minorities, or men as well, men and women, minorities. And I say all that to say, they already know who they're going to give the jobs to. And then they have all of these qualifications. So then, the mayor, he noticed he wasn't really in control over who was getting hired. So then he put out training initiatives to make sure the people from the city could qualify for those jobs. So I appreciated his efforts in that matter, because unfortunately, people just don't have their stuff together.
Well, this is what it all comes down to. It comes down to, and I'm familiar with how Ras Baraka moves and his strategies and all of that. But it comes down to someone in that position being very intentional to say, look, this is how we're going to do it. It's going to go this way. And you have mayors in the past who have done this, from Maynard Jackson in Atlanta to Marion Barry in DC to Coleman Young in Detroit, where they were very intentional. We have this, not a little piece of a project. We have this major project. It's going to a Black business, right? We're going to be very intentional about it. The subcontractor requirements have to be a certain percentage Black. They're very intentional about it. And it was not just one project. They were deliberate about making sure that a series of significant projects. And if you don't have the capacity, look, we'll create a protege program and put 2 or 3 of y'all together to be able to do this deal. Because a lot of times you get disqualified off of technicality. You don't have bonding capacity. Exactly. You don't have the right subcontracting structure. So the technicality is enough to disqualify you. But when you're very intentional, and it takes leadership to be very intentional to say, this is how we're going to do it. We're not just going to give projects here and there or have a set aside. I'm going to be very intentional about making this city be equitable in how deals get distributed.
Yep, and it's very necessary. I also invest in Kansas City, Missouri, and I mean their whole structure. I don't know if somebody's going to listen to this podcast. I don't care, but their whole, political structure and the way things are done, it's kind of, in a sense, in my opinion, leaving out minority developers in many ways. I do know they had an initiative for their new airport that's being built. But outside of that, they put up a lot of housing projects, not projects like a project building, but like a skyscraper or something like that, or a high-rise building. And even when it came to the people who built it, they didn't have that quota met for the build of that project. They didn't make sure that at least 25% went to affordable or, well, low, not, I'm not gonna say low income, but yeah, affordable housing. Like, they didn't have any type of quota. They just put this expensive building in the middle of Kansas City, Missouri, and they allow these developers to have all these tax credits. And I'm like, well, was it benefiting the actual communities? No, it wasn't. And, when I come with these ideas to the table, for some reason, I'm not even trying to do it on that big scale. I'm not trying to put a $50 million building. I'm just trying to build, residential homes. And the big drawback over there is, oh, well, we don't really want affordable housing. Like, we don't want, and it's sad to say, they'll say, those type of people. I'm like, what type of people? Like, affordable housing could be any income range.
Well, so all you do is you just meet them at their game. You don't speak affordable housing language. It's workforce housing. It's mixed income housing.
And I've said that too. So, it's you're very true. It's how you word it, how you say it. And then you have to realize also, even if the houses were worth $400,000 in that neighborhood and you make them $300,000, that's still affordable housing in a sense, right? You're building affordable homes for people. You're just selling it under the market rate. So it's different approaches. I came to them as a developer, and in that area, of course, you have, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Missouri, but they have like a Kansas state, and then they have Missouri. So you have a Kansas City, Kansas, and a Kansas City, Missouri. So it's just interesting how backwards they think. And they don't really, in my opinion, in many ways, they didn't really care about the development of the communities, making sure the people in the communities could actually afford to stay there. So those are some of the, the challenges I come across when trying to rebuild communities. Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. I can't remember how we got there. But yep. So that's amazing that we're having this dialogue. You being in the southeast and I'm in the northeast, and it seems like we're both trying to, one, find out what the communities need, whether it's in the senior housing or in just regular, the affordable housing space. You really have to service what the community needs, assess what it needs, find out what the master plans are in the communities, what those communities plan to do in the future, things of that nature. So that's good that we're touching on those areas. Now, how important is mindset in being a real estate entrepreneur as a whole?
Well, mindset really the footprint that you want to walk in. I mean, I could be doing a 10-unit deal that's $100,000 a door, or I can do 138 unit that's 7 figures. And it's really about knowing or having the confidence and the understanding, the technical understanding, to be able to take down a deal like that. And it's a difference also in the size of deals that we set our eyes on. It's so easy for us to just stick the pen one-dimensionally and focus on doing a certain type of deal. But there's money out there. And the reason why they can have certain structures in place that keep us out is because we're not in that space anyway. If more of us were taking down $20 million projects, I put in the offer in December on 100. It was probably like almost 160 units in Atlanta. That was, well, my offer was probably like around the 13-14 million mark, and what probably got selected was maybe upwards of like 15 and a half. But being able to put a deal together like that and understanding the structure and being able to figure out where the financing and the equity comes in, if more of us can participate in those types of deals, our conversation totally changes. Because there's, in all of those levels, there's different beasts to have to deal with. And if they see more of us in those spaces, then naturally it creates a pathway for us. The reason why we can't compete is because we're not going for those types of deals. We're not structuring ourselves to be able to pursue those types of opportunities. So they're not used to seeing someone like me come in and say, look, I'm looking for low income housing tax credits for a 138 unit, senior living facility. If there were people ahead of me that had already pursued opportunities like that, then their perspective of my project and the viability of it would be totally different. And that's where that shift has to come in. We have to be in that scalable area to be able to say, look, we can have significant shifts all at once. It has to be critical mass, like us sticking to a certain level. Granted, I know that, generationally we've been crippled, right? We don't have that $1 million check that our father, started us off with. We don't have that trust fund. We don't, we've been crippled from that point of how the system like cut off our lifeline. But that's where strategy, that's where collaboration and teaming comes in. These deals are happening. I mean, when I say these boys out here are killing it, and they're doing, and I mean, I had one reach out to me to say, look, we're in our last leg of raising for 1,001 unit multifamily portfolio in Texas. And he knew how to structure the deal, where to find the equity, how to put the financing. And then approached me and said, look, we have about $10 million that still needs to be raised if you want to be able to come in and help us raise. Before I could even sneeze, he had already raised the $10 million. But that's the deal that's happening. If we can get in those spaces, the respect level is totally different, because money respects money at the end of the day. Exactly. So yeah, white and black and everything else in between, there's disparities, but at the end of the day, these boys speak money. Whether you're a woman or a man, all they care about at the end of the day, why do you think they vote a certain way? Right? Because it all comes down to money. They want to make money and make more of it. So when you can come in and have that type of language with them, when you can come in and structure those types of deals with them, it doesn't matter what you look like. They might hate you when you walk out the door, but when we're at the table, we're all equals. We have the same type of balls, and they have no choice but to respect you, because at the end of the day, that's all they care about.
Right. Now, you mentioned the tax credits. What is that process? How do you get the tax credits for these large projects that you're actually speaking of today?
It's not an easy process. You have to understand how to essentially put a deal together for that. Everything from the financial side to being able to structure it, knowing how to work the state side. The tax credits work with tax-exempt bond financing. You got to be able to work that. And that's why being able to do these deals, you got to know your finance. You got to know how to put numbers together. At the end of the day, it's all a numbers game. If you don't know how to structure it on paper, you won't know how to structure the deal and negotiate and pitch the deal. But low-income housing tax credits essentially are credits from the federal government that comes down and are allocated to the state, every state. And they allocate 4% tax credits and 9% tax credits. 9% are more competitive, and there are a lot more stringent requirements, but there's a larger pool of money that you can get from that. 4% is on a rolling basis, so it's not as competitive. And then there are other requirements, but essentially tax credits depending on the percentage of your income that is affordable. And affordable for those standards are at or below 60 to 80% AMI, average moderate income. So being able to structure all of that, there's a technical side to it. And even on this deal, I've never done a tax credit deal before, but there's not going to be any one thing that's going to stop me from being able to pursue a deal. So just because I've never done tax credits, just because I've never structured the financing for it before, does not mean that it's going to keep me out of that door. Essentially, a tax credit reduces your debt that you need, because it's essentially equity in the deal in exchange for keeping the deal affordable. So I put in my homework and my time in structuring my deal to be able to work for LITech. So whatever I had to learn, I learned it, and you know, the rest is history.
Yeah, you're doing the darn thing. So I'm super excited to see, the rest of your journey. When is that project going to be finished, or when do you expect the completion of the project?
Oh, shovel ready. That's a 15 to 18-month construction project. It's 70,000
Okay.
square feet. So it's not something
Mhm.
that's going to happen overnight. When
Right.
you're working with public financing, that's 12 months, 8 to 12
Right.
months to even structure the deal. And
Right.
that's the other thing. You got to have patient money to be able to stay in a deal that long without even being able to start the project. You can't start it till you get all the financing in place. So that means that you're
Exactly.
sitting and holding the building and the project. So you got to be able to have that type of patient money to be able to do so. And then you got the construction period, which is another 15 to 18 months. You got your licensing period, and then you have your stabilization period of when the building will be totally stabilized. So a project like that, these projects, they're 4 or 5 years in the making,
Right.
but the value of it is well worth it. So you're taking a property that say is a $10 million development, $20 million development, and in less than 2 years, 10 years, you're going to double that in value. So it's worth the whole 5 year process that it takes to get it to the pipeline.
Absolutely. And I know one of your personal goals for 2020 was to get to 500 units, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And how
Yeah.
has during COVID that process been? Do you realize that there are deals out there, or you feel like things are, you know, still overpriced?
Real estate is real estate, right? It's cyclical.
Hmm.
So the way the market is now will probably change later on. I mean, we've seen it in our lifetimes a couple of times. COVID actually has not really impacted the real estate market the way that people anticipated that it would. So I don't think it's had any impact on that. I mean, the only impact that you would say is maybe initially everyone's kind of like being antsy in terms of what's going to happen and maybe being more so on hesitation to see, but deals are getting done left and
Yeah.
right.
So houses are selling every day. There's a closing every day. The market in my area, I'm in the New York, New Jersey market. I'm also a realtor too. So there's like literally open houses have lines of people out there. People are outbidding. There's bidding wars. Houses are selling $30,000, $40,000 over
Hmm.
asking. It's nuts. So
Yeah,
it's
deals are
actually one
being
of the
done.
best real estate seasons to date, and I think a lot of others can agree with me. It's been a very busy season. Not for me in the beginning because I wasn't going outside meeting with people, but for people on my real estate team, they're definitely doing closes like twice a week, so
Okay.
they're doing great. But from the investment standpoint, I guess a lot of individuals was expecting for, houses to go down a little, and it's just going up. So I'm like, you
I
better
mean,
jump
here's
on
the
the house.
thing. There was a lot of cash,
Hmm.
you know, even before COVID hit. I mean, I remember I was pitching a deal and what I was looking for in terms of equity, they were like, we don't want to cut less than $5 to $7 million. So there was a lot of investable cash. There's so much money out there. And one thing that I learned, and my mentor really emphasized that to me, it's so much easier to raise money for a larger deal. I can go raise me a $3 million check so much faster from one or two investors than I can finding $100,000 from say 20 people, investing to get to
Right.
$100,000. It's so much easier. So there was a lot of investable cash already out there before
Mhm.
COVID. So the money is just sitting and waiting to be invested. So I think that's why a lot of the activity, because if this economy were to shift the way it's going to shift, the last thing you want to do is to sit on your money. It's not doing anything for you being in a savings account or in a different investment account. You need to park it in a building. So there's a lot of investable cash that's just looking to park their money somewhere.
Yep. So, I mean, I know based on your Instagram page, and I'm going to check out your podcast in full detail, but I know you're a wealth advocate. What does wealth mean to you?
Wealth to me means that 3 generations down from now, my buildings and my projects are still in existence, and I have that third or fourth generation still living. Wealth to me is how Carnegie and Ford and Rockefeller have their names on foundations and in buildings, and they've been gone, they've been dead for God knows how long. That's wealth. And I actually just had a post about that today for National Black Business Month. I created a living trust. And essentially, that is my pipeline for the generations after me. That's part of structuring your future for wealth. If what you're doing right now only benefits you, and when you die, it ends, or maybe your children or your spouse, your parents maybe can eat off of it, that's good. I think that's good to be able to hand off something to your immediate beneficiaries. But what's even more powerful is when you can have a living trust for people who don't even exist and their name in it already. And that's what's wealth, when you can say, I'm gonna plan this for my great great grandkids who I don't even know if they're gonna even come around just yet. And let's say it never happens. Well, I'll put this in a foundation, or it'll go to a nonprofit. That's wealth. And that's where we need to start thinking about how we see money and how we tap into money. It's cool to have a nice car and live in a nice place, but it's even cooler to know that you have an estate plan in place.
Agreed, 1,000%. I actually used to be a real estate paralegal
Okay.
and an estate planning paralegal and probate paralegal as well. And now when I got laid off from that job, and then I really started doing well in real estate, I'm like, well, I wish I would have gotten, took all of those templates so I don't have to pay thousands of dollars to an estate attorney.
Oh no, pay it.
Yeah. Well, no,
That's
I
not
did pay
something that,
it. I did. But
yeah,
when I had to pay it,
yeah,
when I had to pay it, I was like, I had access to all of this. I had Dynasty Trust. I had all type of trust. In
yeah.
my
I
computer.
mean,
Um,
I don't
but
care
it's worth
how
it now.
much I know of something, I pay someone, because sometimes it's good to have a representative, right?
Absolutely.
I've paid an attorney to do stuff that I can do on my own, but
Right.
just to be able to have an attorney speak for you is a game
Right.
changer. And so I talk about investing in yourself and in your business. Sometimes that retainer that you pay an attorney goes a lot further than you saying, this is something that I could easily do or file on my
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It
own.
just, when I was writing out the check to pay,
Right, right,
you know,
right. You never want to cut a check. Yeah,
you know what I mean? But like when it was being paid for, I was like, wow, like I didn't realize the, where I would be a couple years after the fact. I
right.
used to be the person drafting these.
Saw it and you got a foundation for it, because our
Mhm.
community, we die intestate. We die without a will, for one. And a will, you still got to go through probate.
Right.
You know, I think the most recent story is Aretha Franklin, right?
Oh,
And her dying would, I mean, they found a will, but it was a barely their will. And will, you still have to go through the whole, probate process. A living trust, you bypass all of that.
exactly. Yep. So
So we need to learn more so about structuring stuff and family planning and asset protection.
absolutely. And any last words on what it takes to become a successful real estate investor and or developer?
I don't think anyone can give anyone a formula. Success obviously looks different to everyone else, but it's not linear. So to say, what it takes to become successful, my only thing is just do it. I think fear keeps a lot of people out of the game
Yes.
and not knowing how to do it. There's not a deal that I see that I won't have the confidence to do, even if I've never done it before. If I see a $50 million building that I really want, I'm going to
Mhm.
figure out how to get it. I saw this building that I bought 8 months before I actually put an offer on it. I didn't know what the plans were going to be. I don't worry about having all the details. Sometimes analysis paralysis keeps us out of the game. I
Yes.
didn't worry about knowing where the financing was going to come from. I bought the property without having financing in place. I bought the property without even knowing that I was going to do the tax credits. I bought the property without even having a co-developer or an operating partner or even the relationships in place. For me, let me just stick my foot in there. Let me just go ahead and do it, and everything else, I'll figure it out along the way. And a lot of times, because we want all the details and all the information up front, we kind of take ourselves out of the process because you're not going to know everything. This project has evolved. I wasn't looking at tax credits when I bought the building. I definitely wasn't looking at assisted living when I bought the building or when I saw the building. So for me, I don't look to have all the details up front. Everybody's not that type of an entrepreneur. I get it. Everybody's risk level and tolerance and appetite for risk is different. So I get that part. Start with your comfort level. Let your appetite grow from there.
I agree. In this business, you just have to be fearless. Like, even if you don't have everything figured out, like you said, one thing's for certain, if you have a good deal and the numbers make sense and you know how to right, it's going to work out. People's going to throw money at you. Literally. Yep. I have projects now I don't even need partners on. And just because people know it's a good deal, they just want, I want to be involved. I'm like, I didn't need you for this project.
Right.
But, so that's definitely great advice. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you today, Fab. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to meet. We may even be able to partner or collaborate on a deal together. I love what you're doing. Continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you.
And we'll definitely be in touch. Any last regards? And where can people find you on the internet or wherever you promote yourself? I'm sorry.
Well, my last words, I don't even know what type of listeners you have. I'm just going to assume that they're Black, right? So I'm going to just have my little PSA out there, and whoever wants to gravitate towards it. We got to get the money. The money's out there. The money's not going to come to us. The deals are not going to come to us. They're not going to structure the system in our favor. You got to figure it out. You got to go out and do it. Who cares how scary the deal works? How scary the deal looks? Who cares what it's going to take? Put the people at the table to make it happen. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room to make the deal happen. Just put the right people around the table. But we got to go out and get the money. We have a wealth gap that we got to close. And the only way we're going to close it is if we create new Black millionaires. And that's where I'm at right now. To see more new younger Black millionaires being created. And I don't take credit away from anyone who makes their money however they make it. But there are certain industries that we have to break the barriers on. So you could have made your millions off of sports or music or entertainment. You could have made your millions off of beauty or influence. A lot of influencers are making money. But we got industries where we're not in. Technology. We need to go make some millions and billions in technology. Commercial real estate, development projects. We need to have buildings. When I was looking for my building in Detroit, and I drove through and I was doing my site selections, seeing buildings where they're like, that's Black owned, that's Black owned. I don't mean houses and duplexes and quads. I mean commercial buildings, office buildings, casinos that have a Black majority owner. That's what we need to see more of. Until we can see that, we will not shift the paradigm. We got to have our names on buildings. We got to be able to get $50 million federal contracts. It's out there. It's available. Other people are getting it. Why can't we get it? We got to figure out how to do it. And if you don't have all the resources and all the tools, find somebody else. Find 10 other people who can do it with you. But that's my astounding words. I know people preach about starting. I preach about going big.
And you preaching. I was about to say preach a couple of times.
Yeah, I preach about going big. Right. And maybe that's where faith comes in, but I preach about going big. There's nothing that I want that I can't figure out how to do. And that's where abundance mentality comes in. It's all out there. It all belongs to God. It's all available. So I don't care what white boy is doing what. I don't care what access he has that I don't have access to. It's not his in the first place. Our people built this country anyway. So it's due time for us to get it, and we got to go out and get it and figure out how to get it. And people can, find me on Instagram at Invest with Fab.
Awesome. I was about to ask you what church you preach at, because that was good.
No, I don't preach at nobody's
I know. I'm playing.
I am a preacher's kid, but I don't preach at anybody's church. Yeah.
Awesome. So either way, that you spoke a lot of, I feel like a lot of people's lives are going to be changed by your words. So,
Oh, that would be amazing.
yep, absolutely.
I mean,
Well,
I'm still looking to change my life. Where Iyanla at? Fix my life, Iyanla.
well, it seems like it's well put together. But I'm gonna, well, thanks for coming on. We can continue to talk after. I just want to close it out because we'll go into a whole nother subject, right? But it was a pleasure having you on, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of your journey. And God bless.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Alrighty. Thanks.